Hello and welcome to Sideways. This week we're talking about perfectionism, why some people wear perfection as a badge of honour and why it's nothing of the sort. We also discuss some helpful ways of battling it. In addition, there's chat about haircuts, disappointing holiday hotels and forcing yourself to like wine. Perfectionism.
Yes, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, we're sort of back at a normal Sunday morning slot almost, aren't we?
We are, yeah. That's interesting.
Which is nice.
That's an interesting observation.
It was. Well,
I bet everybody's thrilled to be hearing that.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure it's enhanced their day greatly.
Have you had a haircut?
Yeah, I have, mate. Yeah, I've had a sort of a number two all over.
You are number twos all over.
It often strikes me as a bit weird. You know, I get charged the same as some hairy fella that's getting a haircut next to me, and then they got the cheek to hold the mirror up behind my head. And I mean, it always looks the same. You know, it's just there's nothing that can go far wrong with just a straight number two all over.
Yeah, it's well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because that's the whole kind of that's the question about should you pay more for something that takes more time and more effort, or actually is the thing that matters the end result?
Yeah, it's what the end result is, I suppose. But I think he tried to justify him doing my hair so quickly by giving my beard a little bit of a trim and having an argument in whatever his native language was with someone else in the shop there, a couple of chairs along, and it's. So I think it eventually took the same time as any normal person.
Maybe he did it particularly slowly, so you wouldn't feel so cheated.
So I feel like I got value for money. Yeah, well, I suppose I preferred if him just to got me in and out a bit quick. But there we go.
You know, I don't want to be rude, but I mean, he doesn't even have to go over your whole head, does he?
Well, yeah, sort of, yeah, pretty much.
Does he?
Pretty much, yeah. So it is a. It can be done by anyone. I mean, you can do it yourself, really, isn't it? It's just that I don't have the capacity. I haven't got the
equipment.
The equipment, yeah. The beard clippers I use are not really man enough to do a whole head.
Excellent. That's your Christmas gift sorted then.
Thanks, mate. It saved me a tenner every 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I used to cut my own hair, and that was fine. But the problem is when you cut your own hair, it's very difficult not to miss a bit.
Yeah, I think that's
difficult.
True. You go out looking a bit clumpy, don't you? Bits and pieces still in place, you know, which looks a bit weird.
Yeah, it's cheaper, but you look like a scarecrow. So he pays you money, he takes your choice.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it depends how you view if you worry about other people, what they think of you. What I wanted to discuss with you this week was, my heading is the problem with perfectionism. But it just, you know, when you think about it, it's one of those terms that we're all familiar with, aren't we? But it's often used incorrectly and misunderstood. And often people sort of apply it to themselves almost like a badge of honour. And it isn't really. And I just wanted to explore this particular trait and look at there's a hidden link between perfectionism and addiction, which I found during my research, which I thought was rather interesting. But before we start, I just wanted to mention that this is our 104th regular episode, which is it's our last episode in Series 4. So we've completed 2 years, which is good. And I think that you know, it's taken us 2 years to still be completely rubbish at what we're doing.
I was just waiting for the self-deprecation. I was just thinking about that. I was thinking, hang on, haven't we just had a big kind of anniversary? It was the 100th episode, wasn't it? But of course, you're right. This is now we are now 2 years old. You're right.
We are. Yeah, we're
still as clueless as we were when we started.
That's what I was trying to allude to. Yeah.
I think there's a certain charm in that naivety.
I think there probably is. And although that it irks me that they're never flawless, our episodes, because I suffer with a bit of this perfectionism business myself. But I want to come on to that.
Well, I mean, I'm always flawless.
Well, yeah, one of the traits of being a perfectionist is you see flaws in other people as well. You hold other people to very high standards. But I want to come on to there's some interesting bits that came up, and I'm sure that you'll have some valuable input on this. Well, I hope so. Anyway, but another quick one before we start. You sent me a copy of I think it's like a screenshot of some of the strange things that people Google.
Yeah, it was a good one, wasn't it, that?
It was, yeah. I mean, how can I force myself to like wine is something that someone's Googled.
Oh, come on, that's a question we've all asked ourselves, surely.
So people must be looking around and thinking, well, other people are drinking wine and really enjoying it. I really don't like the taste, but I've really got to force myself to fit in. This is crazy, isn't it?
Well, we've all got to have a goal, haven't we? I think that's a reasonable aspiration in life, isn't it, to get yourself to like wine?
Well, isn't it sort of thing? It's societal pressure at its worst, really, isn't it?
I don't know whether you did look further into it, but I actually followed that link, and one of the pieces of advice was start with white wine because it's easier to like than red wine. So I thought, well, that's fair enough. So
work your way up to the
work your way up to the tannins in your full-bodied red wine.
No, well, do you remember? I mean, back in the late 70s, early 80s, there wasn't much wine choice around in the UK. If you went out for a meal, you had a bottle of sweet, like a Liefermilch or something like that, didn't you? Or a Blue Nun, and that was the height of
Tower.
Black Tower. It was the height of sophistication at that time. We really weren't a nation of wine drinkers, but that's over the last sort of 30 or 40 years, it's completely flipped on its head, isn't it? Do you know, I struggled to remember. I really got into wine at one time, become quite a bit of a wine snob, but I can't remember the taste of it now, and I can't remember what's a good one and what's a bad one. I just know that I drifted onto drinking wine directly out of the little tap on the bottom of a box of wine, which is no way to behave, is it? As a wine connoisseur, you wouldn't think.
I can remember you being into wines. Actually, I can remember going out for dinner with you and thinking, oh, that's all right. Mike can have the wine list because he knows about wine. But you're right. That's the kind of irony, isn't it? That you should sort of go from that great appreciation of the bouquet and the complexity of tastes of wine to sculling it out of the tap of a box of wine.
Yeah, the cheapest Soirée or something from Sainsbury's. You know what I mean? It's horrible. But yeah, you go. Well, I used to like to know about wines because I could impress girls with it. You know, if I took them out to dinner, I could say, "Oh, well, this is the right one," this sort of thing. And
do you think it did impress them?
Not really, no. But in my own little mind, I thought it was the way forward.
Still, I suppose it probably impressed them more than you lying prostrate on the floor, drinking it out of the tap of a wine box.
It's one of those horrible memories. I think I sometimes used to mix that with a pint glass with half a pint of wine and half a pint of vodka in it. That was a proper alcoholic drink. That one.
That sounds like it should have a name.
Yeah, it's almost like a cocktail, isn't it? Really, yeah. But it was. Well, I think we'll work on that. There must be a sort of a pretty derogatory term for that. I think because it's a very foul mix.
And as you say, one probably only drunk by the discerning alcoholic.
Well, exactly. Yeah, right. The worst part of their cycle of alcoholism. Yeah.
Well, you could probably. I mean, why go any further than the simplicity of calling it the alcoholic?
Yeah, well, I think that would be great. Don't let the brewers get hold of that because they'll be definitely bang on that one, won't they? They'll be marketing that all over the show, won't they?
Had a hard day at work. Come home to the alcoholic and let everything in your diary drift away.
Yeah, along with your money and your marriage and your relationship with the children, and then eventually your life. Yeah, everything you hold dear.
Yeah, we've done their job for them there, haven't we?
Not much of a strapline, is it really, that one? But I think it's
not massively attractive, is it?
Not really, no. But if you put some classical music behind it and have a sort of a horse running across a beach, it'd dress it up about right, wouldn't it?
I might try and put a bit of classical music behind that when I edit this. We shouldn't be making fun of this, though, should we?
No, we shouldn't. No, it's exactly.
You should know better.
I do know better, and I think you've dragged me down a path I didn't want to go. So I'm going to drag us back on track.
Okay.
So we'll look at then the medical definition of perfectionism. I was just going to read that out first. I think it's a good place to start where I want this to go. Really, it's defined as a disposition to regard anything short of perfection as unacceptable, especially in the setting of unrealistically demanding goals, accompanied by a disposition to regard failure to achieve them as unacceptable and a sign of personal worthlessness. I know it's quite a long definition, that, but I think it probably covers it quite neitly.
Perfect, isn't it, that definition?
Perfect.
Whoever wrote that is definitely a perfectionist.
Well, it's a Wikipedia man. No, it wasn't a Wikipedia man. It was from an accredited website that
was it Psychology Today?
Psychology Today, I think it was probably on. Yes. But I mean, perfectionism is characterised, isn't it, by people's striving for flawlessness, and you set yourself high standards, but I think it's accompanied by the self-criticism and concerns about how other people view you, which is going back to that point we made right at the start there. And because it's so destructive, on the face of it, the way people use the term perfectionism, it doesn't seem too harmful if you're striving to achieve high quality work or whatever. But it's often rooted in the sort of an intense fear of not being good enough. And I think us addicts can relate to that. Us, in active addiction, you never feel you're good enough, and you never feel that anything whatever you do, you're never going to be good enough, and that leads to it's the circular problem, then, isn't it? It leads to drinking and taking more drugs because you can't deal with that emotion, and the anxiety and depression. That can be a sort of a pathway into addiction on its own, or it can be complicit in other factors that makes up an addict. This level of perfectionism where things are never going to be right, you're never going to be happy with what you do, and the standards that you set yourself are never going to be reached.
If you feel bad about yourself and you feel like you're not good enough, then in that sense, perfectionism is a very useful tool for you. Because the thing about perfectionism is that when you expect to do everything perfectly and you will never accept anything less than perfection, you are guaranteed to fail, and therefore you are guaranteed to be able to maintain your own negative self-image. Yeah. It's the perfect way of confirming to yourself your own worst fear of yourself.
Yeah. But there's something I was reading that said that, which I quite liked, and I just want to explore it a little bit more. It said that perfectionists can often find that the pain of imperfection is greater than the joy of perfection, and so you give up because you can never achieve this flawless state, and people can often drift into sort of drinking and taking drugs as a way of removing that from the equation.
Yeah, because when you are experiencing that sort of perfectionism, it really is intolerable to be anything less than perfect.
Yeah, it is.
And so you have to get away from. You have to find some way of kind of escaping from that feeling, don't you?
You do, and I want to come on to that at a slightly later stage if I can, as to how we sort of, if you've got any tips on managing the perfectionist mindset. But just before we get to that, I wanted to just briefly go through some of the research I found linking perfectionism and addiction, which they call it a hidden link, and it was sort of hidden to me until I sort of started to read about it.
Until you found it.
Until I found it. It was no longer hidden.
Yeah. It's not a hidden link at all, is it?
Not anymore.
Not now.
It's there in front of my eyes. But some of the points that I just wanted to discuss with you, really, some of the things they bring up, again, some of it is about this feeling of very low self-worth and self-esteem. But one of the points was saying perfectionists in active addiction believe they're only lovable and worthy if they are perfect. And imperfection then drives shame. This can lead to perpetuating the addiction cycle. If you're never going to have any self-love, very difficult to get other people to love you back.
Yeah, if you feel like you're unlovable, then as I said before, perfectionism is a perfect place for you to live.
Yeah.
Because you'll constantly prove to yourself that you're not lovable.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think that going on to the next point, which sort of links in with that, and certainly something that us people in recovery can relate to, is that even when things are going great, perfectionists will still find the flaws. And that's true. Even the slightest mistake, can cause the perfectionist to unravel, and certainly those in addiction. Just one little slip, all of a sudden, this can relate into sort of beating yourself up for that and thinking you're never going to get better, and therefore the cycle begins again. We discount any progress we've made. I think that's what that illustrates it in addiction. You have a little bit of a blip and you think, oh God, I'm never going to get this. All the work I've done so far in this period of sobriety I've had no longer counts.
But you discount that. You discount your progress because, confirmation bias dictates that you want to prove yourself right about yourself. And so you discount anything that you've done that's positive because you want to prove to yourself that you are as shit as you think you are.
Yeah.
So
I think that makes sense. That makes sense because we sabotage that success almost. It's almost as if that demon drink is there. We think, do you know what? I'm such a worthless person. I may as well go out and pick up and sabotage because I've had this feeling for a little while that things are starting to go okay, and I'm really not used to it. Don't like it. Bang! I'm going to go back into the madness I've just come from.
It's uncomfortable as well, and I think you from any of us, whether we have any sort of history with addiction or not. If we wrote down a list of the things that we regret or feel ashamed of, or, things that we're not proud of in our lives, we'd all be able to make that list. But if you focus solely on that list and you never think of anything that mitigates that and balances it out, then I think we'd all feel pretty rough about ourselves, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I mean, it's when you expect flawlessness, I think even, because I remember talking to my key worker about this, because she picked up on it, about that some of the standards I set, I knew I was never going to reach. Mm-hmm. And she was talking to me about that. And she said, logically, you've got to understand that it's impossible to reach those points, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do, but it still doesn't mean that I find it easy to change my way of thinking. I mean, it doesn't mean that what I do is always perfect. Far from it. In fact, a lot of the times I'll just not do it because I know I'm not going to achieve it or think I'm not going to achieve it. Mm-hmm. And I think that was an issue that she picked up on. And so I can't remember things were a little bit fuzzy because it was right back at the start of my recovery and a number of years ago now. But I know that's something that we had quite a chat about at one point. Yeah.
Has anybody ever, in the kind of midst of your worst perfectionism, has anybody ever said to you, why is it important for you to be perfect at everything?
That may have gone. I don't remember it. No, I don't remember that. So I don't know.
How do you think you'd have answered it if someone had said, okay, so you feel like you need to be perfect at everything. You feel like you need to do everything flawlessly. Why?
Yeah. I suppose that if someone asked me that now, I would say because I would think that, it's probably based around what other people would think of me.
So what you're saying is you would believe that everybody else has an expectation of you to be.
Yeah, probably. Right. I mean,
So if we really challenged that, if we were having that conversation, obviously we are.
Yeah.
But if I challenged that and I said, well, actually, do you really believe that? Do you really think that everybody else expects perfection from you? I think we would get to the point where I think even grudgingly, you'd have to accept that's bullshit. The people don't expect perfection from you, do they?
I don't know. I think a great illustration of that is probably, do you remember you made a cake?
I remember it well.
For Adam's birthday, and you asked me to illustrate it, to paint on with food paints, the cover of Black Sabbath 4, was it? The Black Sabbath?
Correct. Was, yeah.
Black Sabbath 4, which was quite a tricky one to do on a already wet sort of surface.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you to do Sergeant Pepper, but
that would have been tricky. At least Black Sabbath 4 was only 2 colours, but it was tricky to get it right. But I remember I dripped a bit of the orange paint, and it went on the white on the white icing in the wrong place, and it mortified me. And I remember thinking, it just looks terrible now. This is not how I wanted it to go. This is not flawless. This is not how I expected. And I felt that other people would look at it and think, well, yeah, it's okay, but look, it's mistakes.
But that's just that's you projecting.
It is, but
Because,
I almost felt like I didn't want it to go to his birthday party after that, in case people mocked me almost.
well, okay. Well, I mean, in fact, so that's a good illustration of one of the ways in which you have to manage a perfectionist mindset, which is to feel your discomfort about letting something go and let it go anyway. So what happened? I mean, I know obviously you were many years into your recovery when you did that, so you would kind of understood some of these things for yourself anyway. But had you said, actually, I can't let this go, it's too bad, I can't let it go, then all you do would be to strengthen your destructive perfectionism, because actually what you need to do is to recognize with yourself that logically you don't need to be perfect, even if emotionally you feel like you do. Yeah. And if you logically recognize that you don't need to be perfect, then when something is imperfect in your eyes, you have to let it go out into the world. And then what happens? Is you see that this idea that other people will then think, oh, you're no good, you're not much good, and expect perfection from you. You'll see that it's a myth, because everybody at that party said, my God, what an amazing cake that is. So, I know that you could still think to yourself, yeah, they're just saying that, they're thinking it's a load of rubbish anyway. But you have to understand in those sorts of situations that they're your demons that you're dealing with. When you project it out and say, well, I've got to be perfect because everyone else expects it from me. No, It's you that believes that, and you're projecting onto us, but we don't believe it at all. It was amazing, that cake.
Yeah, but I just lost the joy from it. That's the thing.
Okay. You lost the joy from it. But in the end, the whole idea of that was to give joy to someone else.
Yeah, true.
So a lot of people got a lot of joy from that. And when you feel that you didn't get the joy, then I think that's, as I say, that's kind of another illustration that it's about something in you.
But from what you said there, it does make a lot of sense. And it would require further thinking, I suppose, from my own point of view, to see how I deal with that now. I think probably I have matured a little bit on that, and I don't think I have such. I do well. It leads on to the next point, really. That I remember again something that my key worker was, when we were talking about this, that she said, people like you believe that you can achieve things on your own, don't you? And I remember saying, yeah, I'm sure I can. She said, you've got to rethink that, because going back to our episode we did on asking for help. She said, you've got to accept this sort of help, and that it is that sort of mindset similar to, or like, perfectionism that will stop you doing it. So, try and put that to one side, which was easier said than done.
No, but that's great advice, because in a funny sort of way, this podcast is a perfect example of that. I'm in some senses the antithesis of perfection. I'm super sloppy. There's so much that I don't worry about that I probably should worry about. And so that piece of advice from your key worker was great, because what you've done here is you've got involved with someone who isn't a perfectionist. And therefore, in some senses, I will drag you along into places that make you uncomfortable. But actually, that's probably pretty good for you. And similarly, I will perhaps be a little bit more on the ball than I would otherwise be, because I'm working with you, like with the numbering of the episodes.
Okay, yeah.
I would have left stuff like that, but when you pick me up on it, I think, oh no, that's I need to go and sort that out. So,
well, perhaps we both got something from it doing these, and so perhaps we have learned something about ourselves over the last 2 years, even if the listeners haven't. But there was another point of it was about isolation, which linked addiction and perfectionism together. People that have perfectionist problems and people that have addiction problems tend to isolate and to drive other people away, because of either the unrealistically high standards that perfectionists will set other people, and that pushes them towards isolation, which is a major factor again in for those of us with addiction issues.
That's the same thing again, isn't it? If you push people away because you're a perfectionist, then all you're doing is you're perpetuating your opportunity to be destructively perfectionist.
You do, but I think it goes back to that point about what other people are thinking. I think every addict will back me up on this, and saying that when your addiction gets very, very bad, you want to isolate because you don't want other people to see you. You don't want to see that. You don't want them to see you in such a state, and you fear their criticism and you fear what they're going to say. So it's much easier to isolate and to behave in exactly the way you want to, without anyone looking in from the outside.
And what's the net result of that then on reflection? When you think about that, you're quite right. And that's exactly what you did, didn't you? You kind of disconnected completely.
Yeah.
But at the time, that feels like the thing that's best for you. You don't want anyone to see you in the state that you're in, or struggling with something, or falling short of perfection. And where does it leave you in the end?
Just further misery and pain. And I think that it was that, when you desperately try to on the face of it, to not have a problem where deep down you have, and it's that when you eventually you have to give up on that, because you can never hide it up, is when you go into isolation, and then you just keep yourself from the world and just gently go outside your door to go and get your drug of choice, and that's it.
And of course, the other thing is that when you eventually, hopefully, get to the point where you've had enough of your drinking or whatever it is you're using, and you go into recovery, you have to drop your pretense of perfection.
You do get dragged. Then you get dragged into the real world, and it's a very cathartic experience at that point.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Just to be back out in the real world, and to start to, when you've reached that, I don't like to use the term rock bottom particularly, because I don't think it's not descriptive enough of where you go to, but certainly we get to a point where you're surrendering and think, there's nothing else I can do now. I've got to start to listen to people. I've got to start to re-engage with people to get better.
Yeah, so to reach a point where you feel that you have no choice but to drop your perfectionism must feel incredibly freeing as well as slightly frightening.
It was, and I think that going into there, because I'd always had this, again, in my mindset, which is the same as a lot of people that have perfectionist issues, is that, if I can't be best at it, I don't even want to try. And that stopped me sort of going forward and trying to get recovery initially. And I think that happens to a lot of people.
I often in the past have asked people who are perfectionists, do you do anything that you're not good at? And they usually say, no, because I'm not good at it, I'm not going to do it. And I would always recommend that you do something that you're not good at. It's good for you. It's good training for you. Do something. I mean, it probably needs to be something you have some sort of faint interest in, but learn to be okay with being poor at something. It's okay. It's like my drawing, isn't it? We've laughed about that in the past. It's about the process. And so if you are listening to this and you know that you have a tendency only to get involved in things you're good at, try doing something you're not good at. Try doing something that you suck at. And tell yourself all the time through that discomfort, this is all right. This is just an experiment. I'm just doing this to teach myself that if I do something that I'm not very good at, the world's not going to end.
That's true. And I think, the old saying about, growth only happens when you're outside of your comfort zone, I think is perfectly true. And that's always been an issue with me throughout my life. I'd only ever do things that I knew I'd be able to achieve a certain level at, that I was going to be okay at. I'd avoid doing things that I had potentially would show me up and make me look foolish. I'm much better at that now, as people listening to this can tell. Doing a podcast with no experience at all, I'm rambling on. I'm all right with it.
Well, that's good for you. And one of the things, without turning this into a kind of session of therapy, one of the things that is noticeable about you, though, is that it does make you uncomfortable, because sometimes, you will often reference not being good at it and still not knowing what you're doing. It's almost it's almost as if you're setting up, you're creating a foundation of, don't expect perfection from me here because I'm not going to deliver it. And actually you don't need to deliver it. It's like, nobody expects it. It's fine. It's okay. So I know that that's something that you do because it makes you feel more comfortable when you're kind of, you're telling everyone, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. But actually there's no necessity to be. If people want perfection, then they're best not listen to this podcast.
Well, I know sometimes, when we talk sort of off air after we finish recording, sometimes I say, yeah, I think that went well, I think that was a bit dodgy. That hopefully you'll be able to edit that out. I think there's less of the latter now. I think mostly, oh, that was all right. That
Yeah,
was okay.
it's like when you say, when off air, you say something like, you'll have to get rid of that bit. I always think, no, I'm not going to get rid of it then. Because if there's any part of it that makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, I'm going to leave it in there.
It brings you more joy. Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it does bring me joy. I got to be honest, it does bring me joy. But that's not the only reason. It's also because I think it's all right. I think it's okay for it to be a bit ragged. It's okay because life is a bit ragged.
True. That is true, and I do feel that things are generally better for me on that score. And I think the people I talk to about it in groups, I see them get better at it as well as time goes by. There's a lot of people come into recovery, same as I was, sort of arrogant really to a certain extent, and denying that there's an issue that's they're big and they're strong enough to better handle it themselves. And gradually that sort of softens, and you start you brag less about what you've done in the past, and you accept where you are and set new levels for yourself.
Humility is much more attractive than arrogance.
I think so.
It's worth asking yourself where you learned perfectionism and how you learned it and why you learned it. And I always think a good question to ask yourself is, how did you learn that you're valuable? And a lot of people who are listening to this, if you ask yourself that question, the answer to it won't be as straightforward as you might hope it is.
I wouldn't know the answer to that.
So there you go. So if as a child you don't really learn, is there's not a kind of clear way of seeing your value, then as children we tend to put something in that space, which is we imagine that we are only valuable when we achieve things. If we do well at school, or we achieve something, or we're good. If you're a good boy, you're worth something. And so that kind of sows the seeds of perfectionism, because if we start to believe that we're only valuable when we achieve stuff, then we value achievement above everything else. So that's the first thing.
Okay, I understand that.
And the second thing is, which is something that we kind of touched upon earlier on, when you're a perfectionist, you tend to notice everything you do badly, everything you've done wrong. And to balance that out a little bit, try writing down for yourself the things that go well, the things that you're pleased with. And the reason that helps is because you won't automatically think of those things, because the things you automatically think of are the things you do badly. But if you write down things that you do well, or things that you have been pleased with, even though that might seem like there's not very much of it at first, then what you're doing is you're kind of building a body of evidence that weighs against the negative thinking. And that will help you over time to get a more balanced view of yourself. And then the final thing is, it's worth bearing in mind there are two types of perfectionism. We've been talking about the destructive perfectionism, which is I've got to do everything perfect, and if I don't, it's not good enough. But there is another type of perfectionism, which is kind of aspirational perfectionism, which is where you aim for perfectionism, but you never expect it from yourself. And so the fact that you aim for it tends to push your performance up. But when you fall short of perfection, you don't beat yourself up. You just say, well, okay, that's all right. That's enough. I've tried to be the very best I can. I've fallen a bit short of it, but that's okay. Aspirational perfectionism is the thing that will tend to improve our performance, whereas an expectation of achieving perfection is the thing that will destroy our performance.
That all sounds very, 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 very good and very true. I know that, again, when you're looking on the research on this, when it touches upon, because a lot of the websites you can go onto are sort of almost like training manuals from people that are looking at people in the corporate world. I know we give corporate world a bit of a bashing over the time, and I'm sure we don't particularly mean to as a whole, and we don't want to be, it's not a general sweeping statement. Because I was pulled up on that recently by one of our listeners. Jersey said to me, "You always seem to be having a pop at the corporate world." He's been in the corporate world. He's just retired now. He's been in the corporate world all his life. I said, "Well, it's not. It's not corporate world per se. It's just that some of the unpalatable parts of it, which have been a negative impact and negative influence upon myself, and certainly, and I mentioned you and saying Graham has had in his life as well. So it's not something which we think is wrong or evil or whatever. It's just we know that some of the outcomes of being involved in that can be negative."
Well, Jez, here's a message for you. If you listen back to, I don't know what episode it was, But I can remember putting my life in the corporate world on my gratitude list. Thank you very much.
Well, there we go. Okay, well, that's him. That's him dealt with.
Yeah, yes, that's put him in his place. So we don't expect to hear any more from you, Jez. Thank you very much.
He's just recovered from COVID, so he's a bit vulnerable. So we can't go too hard on the lad.
Okay, good. Was that a segue into the gratitude list?
Well, I think we've neatly stumbled into it.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of unknowingly created a segue there, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Well done, me.
Well, very good. Wasn't perfect, but it was all right.
Well, go on. It must be you go first this week.
Well,
mainly because I haven't thought of anything yet.
All right, okay. I'll give you a few seconds to. Well, you might find this a little bit strange, this one, but I'm grateful for the vegan ready meals in Tesco's. Yeah, I thought you might make you laugh.
Oh dear. Right, okay.
You probably never thought you'd hear me say that, but
no, I didn't.
Well, I remember trying. You know, like in Tesco's and sort of other supermarkets, you get stuff that's coming towards the end of its date and it goes out cheap. I thought, I'll try one of those, and I tried a vegan ready meal. I thought, that's really nice, and so I bought a few of them recently. It's I'm not vegan, not by any means, I still eat meat and dairy products and all sorts. But I think as part of a balanced diet, there's some really delicious stuff to be had amongst the vegan menu.
What was it that was on offer then? What have you been eating?
Chickpea masala.
Lovely. Well, I'll tell you what, a chickpea curry is a big favourite in our house. Yeah.
There was others that I can't remember the name of them because they're a bit strange, but I've found them a pleasant experience, and I'm sort of forming that as part of my overall balanced diet now. I think it's
quite
grateful.
Right.
I'm grateful I haven't had to explore it too much. I've just got to go into Tesco's and there they are, ready meals, bang, heat them up and away you go. I think generally, I mean, as a society, we're drifting more towards that sort of diet, aren't we?
We need to, don't we? We
do, and I think there's a necessity to do so environmentally. But I think that I think people are becoming more aware of it. And in the past they've feared it, and now it's becoming more mainstream.
We're virtually COP26, aren't we, on this episode?
Yeah, you can have a little Greta Thunberg style rant if you like.
We're COP25 and a half. Anyway, well, that is I can't. I mean, there's no beating that. Is there vegan ready meals at Tesco's for gratitude? I mean, mine pales into insignificance now. Tell you what I'm grateful for this year. I'm grateful for the fact, usually by whatever it is now, 21st of November, usually we've had at least one day of very strong winds.
True.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for the fact that we haven't had a day of very strong winds, because if you go out walking, as I do, at least 2 hours a day with the dogs, the trees are absolutely beautiful. None of them have had their leaves blown off them. And walking through the woods and the parks and so on at the moment is glorious. And I found myself walking particularly, slower, so that I can enjoy the beauty of the flora and fauna. I know it's not as good as vegan ready meals, but that's what I'm going. That's what I'm going with this week.
Well, it's not perfect, but it's good. So if we looked at what tracks do you reckon like perfect?
Fairground Attraction.
Exactly. That was the first one that I thought of, which is just called Perfect. But Ed Sheeran does one as well, obviously, which is a very well-known track of his. But that's very good. Perfect Day.
Yeah.
Lou Reed,
nice.
And loads of other people have covered that over the years.
It's such a perfect day. That one.
It is that. The only thing I wouldn't put it on there because there's apparently it references the feeling of taking heroin. So
yeah.
it's not really what I want to put on here. Wouldn't be right.
Yeah. He liked a drug, didn't he, Lou Reed? I think
he did like a drug. Yeah. So I didn't want to glamorise that. That's for sure.
No.
Perfect 10 by the Beautiful South.
Yeah. Don't like them much.
No, you don't like them. I'm quite keen. But I'm not putting any of those on. What I'm putting on is by a new band I've discovered. It's a Canadian indie rock band. They're called Hotel Mirror, but it's MIRA, Hotel Mirror. I suppose. Which sounds like it's like the sort of hotel that you'd rock up to when you go down to the Algarve or something, doesn't it? Really, but that's the name of the group. Very, very good. But
where the pool is much smaller than it looks on the website.
Well, exactly. Yeah, don't you? But we've all been there on that one.
There's a disappointing continental breakfast.
Yeah, sausages abroad, they're never the same, as they?
No, they're like small chipolatas, aren't they?
They are.
They're like hot dogs, really. They're hot dogs.
Yes. Yeah, you don't get a beautiful British sausage, do you, when you're abroad? That's for sure.
No.
But anyway, I'm adding a track by them, but it's actually called Perfectionism, and I like it. And I've listened to some more of their stuff, and I'm liking them. So Hotel Mirror, good band. I recommend them.
All right, good.
So that's about me, mate.
See you next time.
See you later.
Laters.
Bye.
Bye. Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.